There were some conversations where I would be there ready to do my portion of the pitch or my slide, but questions would be very directed to him. And it felt like there were some male biases there.
Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. I know Pickle is all the rage right now, especially in New York, so I can't wait to dive deeper into your business. Tell me more about what you were doing before Pickle and how you got here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. Prior to Pickle, I had a bit of a non-traditional background getting into the world of entrepreneurship. I was previously working at Blackstone, more the tech side of finance, working on different data analytics projects and product management with the fundraising and real estate teams at Blackstone. That's where I met my co-founder, Brian. And then prior to that, I went to Penn undergrad. I studied material science engineering, so had a heavy pivot away from that. I'm not doing anything with material science engineering anymore, but I also studied entrepreneurship, so that was a bit of foreshadowing for my future here. At Blackstone, I met Brian. We worked together for almost 2 years, and that's where kind of the idea of Pickle came about. It was actually something that Brian had been working on, and Pickle 1.0 is actually a different version of what Pickle is today, the rental marketplace. So do you want me to dive into what it was?
I would love to hear
the initial
what it was.
version?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the first version of Pickle was actually a social polling app, and people were asking their community different questions so that they could basically justify a different purchase decision or help de-risk that decision. So they might have been in the market to buy a new dress or decide what to wear, and they would post to their community of people who had similar style preferences and say, should I buy option A, option B, option C? Or what should I wear, and give a few different options. So kind of like that social proof integrated into this purchase process. For us, it was kind of a data play and a really interesting way to gain some consumer insights. And with those polls, we saw that people were actually using them in a bit of a unique way. They were commenting things that they already owned in their own closets. So they'd be vouching for their favorite brands, their absolute favorite dress, or the brand new suit that they just bought. And a few people were even commenting that they would love to borrow those items or share them with somebody. So that was a really interesting, unique way that people were using that app and not really intended of what we were building. And so we thought that was cool. Our retention numbers weren't exactly where we wanted to see them on that app. So we were starting to kind of look around at some different ideas or potential pivots. And so we started doing some research in the rental space and saw that no one had really tackled this peer-to-peer area. And so we basically went heads down, retooled and rebuilt the platform in a few weeks, and relaunched an MVP to what it is today. The MVP was the first version of the peer-to-peer rental marketplace that we have. And the idea was for women and people in a community to be able to share items and access them from other people's closets, like a true extension of your closet, kind of like Airbnb, but for the things that you own. And so we launched that marketplace about 2 years ago.
I'm obsessed because I'm all about helping women make more money passively.
Yes.
This is like literally the
side
most
hustle.
epic way. So interesting to hear this story. Obviously, like we think that all the companies that we hear about, Airbnb, Uber, whatever, like the way that they started is how they ended up. It's like completely not true. Like usually the best idea comes after like all these iterations, which makes so much sense that like Pickle wasn't where we thought it was when it started. I know that finding a co-founder is challenging, and it's so cool that you were able to have worked with Brian before you started Pickle.
Absolutely.
Especially because like you really need to know and trust your co-founder to like start a company together. It's literally a financial marriage.
Yes.
Like, it's not casual.
Yes.
So I'd love to hear more about like that moment when you decided, okay, you wanted to quit, and like how did you and Brian make that decision? Was it together? Was it separate? And like what was that transition like?
Yeah, these are great questions. And the financial marriage is such a good way to phrase it, because I've said it to other founder friends that have talked about getting a co-founder. I said, you have to be very careful who you decide to start your business with, because that is the person you will spend all of your time with. You will spend more time with that person in your life than anybody else, your family, your friends, your significant other. And so I'm very, very lucky that Brian and I have an awesome business partnership, and we're also friends outside of work, of course. And that was very clear at Blackstone that we had an excellent working relationship, and we also enjoyed, going to happy hour together and stuff with our Blackstone coworkers. But when we were there, it was interesting timing where the pandemic kind of opened up this opportunity for us to be able to look at things outside of just the day-to-day Blackstone work. We were working remotely at that point because we had been sent home March 2020, and Brian and I were talking about the initial idea of Pickle in the fall of 2020, right before 2021, obviously. And we wouldn't have had time or space to really have a lot of those deeper conversations about the first version of Pickle without having that remote space. So we were able to heavily prioritize getting our Blackstone work in a really good spot and then spending all night after typical working hours working on Pickle. And the first versions were even just, mock-ups and prototypes. I remember drawing some screens on cardboard when I was like away for the weekend, just thinking about the way that we would even design and iterate on the app. And so we definitely worked on it a bit before we made that decision to go ahead and quit our jobs. And what we ended up doing was having a more serious conversation about being full co-founders and really looking to take that next step and planning to leave Blackstone first thing in 2021. And that was the point where we needed to decide, what does that timeline look like? Because of course, making that leap of faith is also giving yourself runway with no salary. So I had said, I want to make sure that I'm comfortable making sure I have at least 6 months, no salary. Let's make sure that we go for this before we kind of do this like family and friends round. That was kind of the initial plan for some fundraising, aside from the bootstrapping that we were doing. But we had really strong conviction, of course, in the initial idea. We did some light prototyping, a lot of user interviews that we could do with our friends or family or people that, just seeing if they'd be interested in using this kind of app. We definitely could have done more of that. We did a better job with that during our pivot. And then just started working on a serious pitch deck that we would be ready to go out for that family and friends round, and made the decision that we'd be ready to leave in like the spring. Brian left Blackstone 1 month before I left Blackstone. It was definitely something that we were navigating a little bit at the beginning because, you're leaving that kind of corporation, and it's a little bit, there are just parts of leaving a company where you're not supposed to solicit and bring somebody else to another company, but we had been working on it before. So there's little nuances there. But I think the biggest thing about quitting that very stable job was I had so much conviction. Of course, I believed in the idea and the initial concept of Pickle, but I had a ton of conviction in our founder partnership and what we were building together. I really trusted Brian as a business partner and somebody who we had very similar mentality, similar work ethic, similar values in the sense of how I thought we would be like running the company. So I had a lot of conviction in him and us as a partnership. And without that, I definitely wouldn't have been able to leave Blackstone, if that makes sense.
100%. I mean, your company as good as the founding team.
Right.
Like, if you and your co-founder are aligned, and if you have a team that's like willing to put in the work, like you're going to figure it out, even if that means multiple pivots and iterations. I quit my corporate job a little bit over a year ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And navigating that alone was tough. So
yeah.
It's really cool to kind of hear the story of like you having someone to do that with you. I think a lot of people have this misconception that I need to have my idea and then I need to get my funding, and then like once everything is like perfectly and then I'm going to quit.
Right.
And that couldn't be farther from the truth. In fact, I actually took a 3-month sabbatical before I put in my 2 weeks because I wanted to perfectly align my ducks in a row before I left. I was like, this is how I'm going to do it. 3 months. Plenty of time. Like, couldn't be farther from the truth. And the ironic thing is I didn't even know, like at that time, I had a lot of conviction in what I was building, and I was really excited to quit because it seemed like it had legs, and I had built the initial versions of it, and I like quit and whatever. And like a few months later, like everything had changed. Yeah. Like classic entrepreneurial journey of like, well, I was completely wrong. Yeah. But it's only in that moment where like I have left everything behind and like I have to do this. Am I gonna like actually find something creative, innovative, think outside the box enough to actually come up with something that ended up being what Genshi is today, which is now all of a sudden something that I could have never probably quit my job to do. Right. It's the truth. So it's really cool to know that like that wasn't just my experience.
Yeah, because I mean, when I talk to people that are trying to build something on the side of their full-time job, I always tell them that if you aren't able to go and have enough conviction in quitting your full-time job, you're going to have a hard time raising any money. Because why would somebody invest in you if you're not investing in yourself up front and making that leap? If you should have that conviction in yourself and your business or whatever you're working on to do that, alternatively, an investor, I think, would have a harder time believing that as well.
Totally. I mean, as an investor myself, I would almost say it's impossible to raise money if you're doing it part-time. It just literally doesn't make sense from like a venture-backed standpoint of like the whole reason a investor would invest is because they see you becoming one day worth $1 billion, and like you literally cannot do that part-time, let alone like full-time. So
you can't.
That doesn't even make sense anymore, I think. And I think like just we should be honest with ourselves, where if we don't really see us doing this full-time, there is nothing wrong with starting businesses part-time and running it part-time or exploring hot titles. And I actually went and raised money after I quit as well. And I found that it wasn't for me. So I'd love to learn about your experience
about
raising
fundraising.
money.
Oh my gosh.
Like tell me all of it.
Oh, a piece of cake, right? It's like the easiest thing ever. No, it's not the easiest thing ever. It's something that, again, very, very fortunate that I have a co-founder. And the way that we have split up responsibilities, Brian is our CEO, more traditional in that sense, covering a lot of the fundraising, especially those initial conversations and getting the ball rolling. And then he also covers our product and engineering side of the house. He is a self-taught software engineer, which is amazing. It gave us a ton of amazing flexibility with building out the app. I was a self-taught designer kind of thing. We had to do all of that really scrappy ourselves. My side of the house is, as the COO, is growth, marketing, community, go-to-market strategy. I cover our newer retail vertical and things like that. But tying it back to the fundraising question, we set out and we knew that we weren't going to go right to VCs. We barely had this idea and working like prototype for Pickle 1.0. So we decided to put a formal pitch deck together for a family and friends round. And we decided to do a safe note. I think we raised around 250K. And that was what we had decided was going to get us through a year and a half before we wanted to go raise this pre-seed round. And a year later was basically when we did that pivot. And so we were starting from scratch. So we were in no form or situation ready to kind of raise that pre-seed, or at least we were not finding fit with investors that we were talking to. We were often getting the conversations of, okay, this is an interesting idea. We need you to get to these metrics, to these numbers. They were often looking for a certain milestone that we'd be hitting, whether it was monthly active users or volume of transactions or revenue growth month over month. And we had to basically figure out how we could get to some of those numbers by ourselves, when we had already basically used almost all of that initial capital from the family and friends round and only having 2 resources. But that is why we ended up doing a ton of things really ourselves at the beginning. And it was a forcing mechanism too. We had no choice but to do it ourselves because we didn't have money or resources that we could utilize. And we, that whole time, really tried to raise a pre-seed round. We get to a new milestone or we get to a new, growth metric that we'd want to show to investors, and they would say, okay, a little bit more. And so we ended up building and growing enough where we actually were able to raise a seed round. And so that was because we hit enough traction with our numbers based on heavily listening to all of our customers, iterating super quickly on the product, really just us two and a few interns along the way that were willing to help us. And we were very fortunate to get a good warm intro, have some of those in-person meetings that made all the difference for us to close our seed. We ended up doing basically a seed round that was kind of in junction. We raised from Craft Ventures and First Mark as our lead investors, and then we also raised from Burst Capital. Yeah.
I mean, they say like the founders who raise money are the ones who don't need it. It's because there's certain milestones that they're looking for to show traction. You're like, wait a second, I already figured it out now, and now I'm raising it. It's just ironic because the truth is like people think that you raise money and then you go build. No, actually you go build, you prove it, you show traction, and then you raise money to scale and grow. You don't raise money to build. And it's like this common misconception. And when you think about it that way, and you think about the fact that you actually have to build something that works before you go and raise, Yeah, it actually makes sense that it takes several years before you go and raise that first round of funding. That the meaningful one where that you can build like a team around it and actually take the product to the next level. But I feel like we just like don't talk about that enough. No. At least that wasn't something that like I was exposed to. Like I was taught, okay, you raise money and then you go build the company, and that just like doesn't work.
Yeah. And I haven't found people that it's worked for yet, but.
At least in a market like at least today's
like market, last year's market. Not back in during the crypto times or just throw money. It was 2021.
That wasn't realistic. I don't think that time is coming back. No. And it does make sense for both founders and investors. Like that's the right time to like bridge that partnership. So I thank you for being real about that.
Of course. It's very different. It's very different experiencing it than the expectations. And it's hard though too to think about that where you really won't be able to raise for that until you have a certain amount of traction, because you're like, well, how do I do it if I don't have some of this capital? So you have to get really scrappy. The interns, the people that want to put in the sweat equity, and the people that believe in your mission and your values, and they want a resume builder. They believe in your idea enough. You know, some of those interns that were working with us, you know, for their resume building, because we couldn't really offer them much else, are some of our early employees.
But also, like, if you think about it, when you're very early in your career and no one's willing to give you a chance, this is quite literally the best possible professional experience you're going to have. And the easiest way to get hired is to like have done the job before.
Absolutely.
So like so many young people will come to me and ask me like, whatever, like, how do I get a job at Google and all these things? And I was like, well, the only way these companies are going to actually eventually hire you is like you first have to do the job at least once. Yeah. And there is no better way to do it than these really early stage startups like yours at the time, and really offer that sweat equity, because what in exchange you get, it's like the start of your entire career for the rest of your life.
It's very true.
It's really, it's a win-win for everyone. So I love that. So you said your co-founder raised your funding. Less than 2% of venture money goes to women. Do you think that like was a dynamic that you saw where like he was easier for him to raise because he wasn't a woman?
Yeah, I mean, to clarify, we did the fundraising together. He was just able to kind of take along kind of the heavier volume side, where you have a lot of those kind of intro calls or helping with sourcing and things like that. So when it would get to a serious conversation, we were both part of those calls, because that helped us pitch the product better. One, I am in our prime user demographic and everything, so I can speak really strongly to our end customer experience and speak to the community growth and like my side of the house things. Not better, but it's supplemental to what he is speaking about. So I would say that we definitely had to do that part together to get to the finish line. But I will also say that it was definitely helpful to have a male co-founder to fundraise. There were some conversations where I would be there ready to do my portion of the pitch or my slides or talk about my areas that were my expertise specifically, but questions would be very directed to him, because maybe it's just because he's the CEO, but often it felt like there were some male biases there. But very fortunately, that is not the case with our investors, who we are so grateful to have and who we work with today, that have been amazing across the whole process. Those were people that I had met from day one as part of the fundraising process too, with those really early intro calls and first meetings and everything. So I would say that it definitely helped that he was part of that. But we did it as a team.
Totally. I mean, I will forever remember like the extreme pain, like how disheartened I was when I would get a no from an investor. And I would take it so personally. But like looking back at that experience, I was like, thank God they said no, because it's just moving me forward to investors that are more aligned with me and also like the mission of the company, which is so important. Like having any investor is not a good idea. Like you need to have investors that are actually like want to be partners with you in that.
Absolutely.
So sometimes it just like makes sense for these things to happen, because it just is steering you to like the right direction.
Absolutely. And it all worked out, I think, the way that it was supposed to. And we talk about how we were so grateful that we didn't raise money for a long time, because that's how we learned everything. And that's how we got to know our customers door to door, literally, because we used to do all the pickle deliveries ourselves as couriers. And so when we had no money to be able to help provide this amazing, convenient experience when you were renting from somebody in your neighborhood or in your community, we were the ones that went and talked to our customers. When we say, hi, I'm going to pick up your item. I'm from Pickle. And then I would ask them how they heard about us, or what they loved about the app, what they would want changed about the app. And those are experiences that you don't get if you have a lot of money, where you just push a bunch of couriers out to be able to do those deliveries. And we really got to see that end process and talk to all of our customers, which was super helpful.
That's probably why you're able to iterate on the product so fast, because you're like literally real-time
literally
learning.
Talking to them.
You're like, okay, that's a problem. Can you go fix that like tonight?
Yes. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to write this down. Or I'd say, can I actually take a quick video of your phone and debug the app live with them? That still happens sometimes. If somebody shows me something, this happened the other week, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna send this to my engineers right now. I'm taking a little video of it. It's hilarious."
That's literally epic. So Pickle started in New York City, and now it's available nationwide. Can you tell us more about like how you scaled and grew that?
Great question. The first thing that I'll say is that it's a bit incidental that it was nationwide. Not that. I guess let me take a step back. The app has never been restricted to only New York City. We are just very focused on building local community so that you can have this amazing magic moment of renting door to door with somebody that lives in your neighborhood or in your city, which makes Pickle feel like a true extension of your closet. We never restricted downloads or anything like that where, you could only sign up if you were in New York or only in a certain city. So the presence and the growth nationwide has been through organic social amplification, where people are following along, whether it's our accounts or other people that are sharing about their Pickle experience. That's how they're hearing about it. And that's why they're downloading outside of some of our core markets. And we did build the technology so that you can use it anywhere. So we have a big focus on the locality aspect and that amazing magic moment of renting locally. But if you want access to a really, really cool New York City closet, then you can use our integrated shipping. And so the nationwide presence has happened a bit just through organic word of mouth and marketing that goes out across socials and everything. But we don't, post TikTok ads that go nationwide. If we do anything that's on the ad side, which is very light for our marketing, it's usually 10 to 20% of our marketing, 80% is organic. We're very geo-focused, so that'll only be like New York. We're focused on LA right now. But you can't control what happens organically. So as people are learning about Pickle, we're seeing different organic spots pop up, which is really cool. So the reason that we have been focusing on LA kind of as our second market is because people organically started using Pickle without us marketing there. People saw some closets in New York that they wanted to borrow from. They downloaded, started renting from New York, and then realized, I could open up my own closet. And then people in LA started exchanging before we were doing any marketing there, which was really exciting. That gave us enough indication to put some resources and spend, of course, out there. And then that's how we'll decide as we expand to other markets. So when we start seeing early traction in Miami, Chicago, Dallas, we're like, we have little hotspots that start popping up based on just users that are organically aggregating.
So cool. I mean, organic growth is like the best growth you could possibly have. Yeah. So how do you ensure the clothes that are being rented are actually like high quality, that they're being cared for? Because I would hate to be a customer and get something and it's just like totally not ready for me to wear.
Absolutely. And so there's a few different things. Obviously, we have these protection policies in place that are there to protect both the lender side and the renter side. So if you are renting a dress from me, you are guaranteed to get that item that is ready to wear and properly described. So if I said it was a size medium and it arrived as a size extra large, then of course you would be able to get that full refund. And same if it wasn't clean and ready to wear. We also have in place a very thorough review system similar to what you see in Airbnb. So lenders are, very incentivized to make sure that their rental process goes through smoothly, or else they will not actually make the money from that rental. When you are a lender renting out your item, you're of course adhering to these policies, and there is actually a 12-hour gap between the time that the item's delivered and when you are paid, because that gives you time as the renter. If there is a problem or it didn't arrive as expected or as described, not clean, whatever it was, then you're able to easily submit a case with our support team and then have that refund go through, no problem. That is not a frequent occurrence because our lenders are very motivated and they want to get good reviews. They want to get traction in their closet and have repeat customers. So they know that it's a little business for themselves. And if they're sending out items that aren't ready to wear, they're not going to have good repeat customers. On the lender side, of course, you're also protected. So your items, if there are any accidental damages or if the item was lost or damaged beyond repair, the renter is liable for those costs. Again, most people are really treating these items with love and care. There are reviews, so if you treat someone's item poorly, you're going to get a poor review and you likely won't be able to rent again on the platform.
Yeah, no, I love that you're handling it that way. How do you approach someone who's criticizing a product or complaining a product that is not actually like bad or not being misinformed? Yeah.
Yes, great question. So whenever we are receiving any sort of complaints or things that customers are unhappy with, the first thing we figure out is why they are unhappy, obviously. So sometimes it's a level deeper of understanding. They might be complaining about this, but what actually happened so that we can kind of understand what part of the process caused this issue. And if it's something that's completely out of our control, that's, unfortunate, but that's something that we really value our customer experience. Every single customer that's on the platform, we have invested a lot of time and resources into building a really amazing support team and have an awesome customer support lead in our New York office who runs this entire team, so that we have people that can get a response to any inquiry within our average response time, I think, is 2.5, 3 minutes. Very, very quick. We really want people to feel comfortable on the platform. And when it's something that they're having a rental experience and it's same day, they need their item for a wedding that they're going to this weekend, it's Thursday afternoon, this is a high priority, high pressure situation, and they need that kind of support immediately. And so we have amazing staff trained on that. And then if there is that kind of bad experience or something goes wrong in the process, our team really goes above and beyond to remedy that. We have had some people that were early days trying out Pickle, something went wrong, whatever, happened. And those are some of our most loyal customers because we worked so hard to remedy the situation or give them a full refund, or our team, ate the cost, whatever it was going to be.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And it's really important that you keep your customers coming back.
Yes.
Totally.
Definitely.
Well, renting is now becoming totally like a thing that everyone's trying to do now, and so many companies are popping up. So how does Pickle try to stay competitive in this fashion rental marketplace ecosystem?
We're very focused kind of on ourselves as opposed to being super hyper aware of other competitors. We have a really amazing relationship with our end users and customers. And so we often get quick feedback if somebody is trying to poach users or creators that we're partnered with or things like that. And we have some amazing loyalty on Pickle. And what's been helpful is obviously building this strong community and network. And people have traction on Pickle that if you switched over to another platform, you're not going to have that same traction immediately. So I'd say it's definitely a combination of our local approach and community first kind of efforts that we put in on the platform that allow us to have really high retention and customer loyalty, and people that are communicating with us about these other companies potentially that might be asking them to switch over to those platforms. And we'll get feedback from them if anybody goes and tries it. We'll say, oh, how did you like it? What was your experience like? And often it's a traction thing of, oh, I tried it out. Certain features weren't where I liked them to be or what I've seen on Pickle. And I also didn't receive the same kind of traction or rentals that I'm getting on Pickle.
Yeah. Are you seeing that like as a demand for peer-to-peer like rental increases, the fashion industry is changing or responding to that?
I think it's going to be interesting how the fashion industry holistically responds to that. I think what's amazing about peer-to-peer is that it aligns sustainable efforts with an economic and financial incentive that actually makes sense. So tons of companies want to be more sustainable or lean in that direction, but if the finances or the economics don't work out for the end consumer, people likely won't be as quick to adopt them, especially at scale. And so that's why there's companies like Shein that are hugely valued and do incredible business because the price point is so low. And so the peer-to-peer model allows people to access these really high quality pieces at a price that is much closer to what you would pay if you were turning to fast fashion, but you're actually just circulating your money with other people in your community, creating that side hustle and using a much more sustainable option than something like fast fashion.
Totally. Like, let's be real, the Shein clothing that you're buying for this really cheap price, like you're probably only wearing it once and then you're throwing it away.
Yes.
Because there's really nothing you can do with that. And that is really, really like bad for the environment. And I have found that oftentimes I will struggle with it because I don't have that much money to buy this like really high quality designer thing. And I'm stuck doing things that are like against my values. And then I'm like, I get in this position where like, I don't know what to do. And the truth is I only really need something for one-off situations. For the everyday, like I already have everything I need.
We're both wearing items that we are wearing all the time, week over week.
Yeah. Like I'm going to wear this next week and the week after, like literally infinitely. They're just like basic clothes. So really love that like Pickle is tackling that for sure. Who would you describe as like the Pickle power user?
Great question. Because we have a few different ways that we look at our power users. We do a very close analysis on both our lenders and our renters. And fortunately, we have people that participate in both sides of the marketplace. It's around 50% of our lenders are also renters, which is amazing because often when we are acquiring new people onto the platform, they want to participate on both sides, which is really cool. We would say a power lender might be somebody that is a bit of a fashionista, a trendsetter, somebody that has really loved and enjoyed investing in their wardrobe. And now they have this amazing opportunity to monetize these pieces that were previously sitting there and aren't able to be worn as often as they deserve to be. That would be kind of the power lender. The power renter is definitely somebody that wants to be able to keep up with this really quick fashion trend cycle, but isn't looking to shell out $400 or $500 every time they want to wear something new, cares about quality of fashion as well as some sustainability there, and of course has an amazing experience with the price point that can be offered with a rental. Often items are priced 10 to 20% of the retail value, so instead of spending that $500, you're renting $40 to $60 for that week is a pretty unbeatable price. And so those are some of the women that we see currently participating very heavily on the platform, but it's awesome too because this is not something that only the fashion forward girls can be using. It might be, we also see a ton of lenders that are just girls that might have just gone through wedding season and they've invested in a few different pieces that they're now able to circulate. By no means are they potentially, a buyer or something in the fashion industry specifically, but they have invested in a few pieces and now they get to circulate them. That's how I would describe myself. I'm much more of a renter than a lender, but I've invested in a few pieces recently for wedding season and those are the items that I'm circulating. On the lender side, I'm also like a shopping procrastinator. So I'm often finding that I need the last minute outfits when I am traveling, going on trips, or getting invited to last minute things.
Totally. Oh my goodness. I feel like you described me.
Yeah, we're the same.
Okay, so cool. Are you finding that like people on social media or influencers are finding more traction or being able to lend more or even just have more pieces to lend?
Sorry, your question is, are creators having more traction?
Creators and influencers, do they have more traction?
Creators and influencers definitely have an advantage in the sense that they have a platform of people that follow them specifically for their style recommendations. So if they are big on sharing about their closet, they can get 1,000 followers of their closet pretty quickly when they share about it on social media, which is definitely helpful because that's great for building immediate traction, getting some of those rentals and everything. They also definitely have access to some of the supply that other people don't as readily have access to. But creators and influencers make up a very, very small portion of the supply that's on our platform. It's around maybe 1% to 2% of the supply is in these creator closets, and we see that top closets that are doing really, really well in New York, making over a couple $1,000s a month, 5 figures in a year, are not influencers. So there's a huge kind of variety of people that are using the platform. Some people that might be really, really invested in like kind of the fashion space and everything and invested in their closet, really turned it into a side business for themselves. On the creator side, it's definitely helpful that they can share about their closet specifically with their audience who's there for that kind of recommendation. And for us, it's great because we have been able to work with creators in more of a strategic capacity as opposed to traditional influencer marketing. We do not have the marketing budget to afford traditional influencer marketing. So we have worked very closely with different creators on helping amplify their closets or helping them spread the word or giving them the tools to be able to market themselves and market their Pickle closets.
And I think you have physical stores now,
yes.
which is so
we do have one.
epic.
Yeah.
Tell me more about the decision behind that. I feel like that's unexpected for like a digital marketplace.
Yes.
But I'm sure it really helps build that community that you talked about.
Absolutely.
So would love to hear about like also like how you set that up. Like how do you have clothes in a store instead of in people's closets?
Great question. So the store actually came from another really scrappy thing that we did that was not scalable to get the marketplace off the ground. But at the beginning, when we were solving the classic marketplace chicken and the egg problem, how do we build supply and get demand and, you know, get supply to be happy because they're getting rentals or whatever, we knew that there was a play in the creator space because of excess supply there and because of the access that these women have to certain brands and items and everything. But we also know that they don't have as much time to be able to allocate towards managing their closet and everything. So we actually managed a few closets out of Brian's apartment for quite a bit of time before we opened up that store. And that was to help kickstart some of these transactions, work on building the supply of the marketplace a bit in like an unscalable way. But that gave a really good precedence to the types of clothing and quality that people would really love to rent, because these people were sharing items that were near and dear to their hearts. They didn't want to donate them or sell them. They wanted to make sure that they could monetize them. And so we took these items into Brian's apartment, very much not scalable. And then when we had raised capital, we knew that we weren't going to be able to just run these out of Brian's apartment anymore. And so the options were potentially putting them in like a storage facility and managing that way. Or we thought this is an amazing marketing opportunity for us and a great way for us to almost have a billboard that's in the West Village, but now it's a storefront where we can have this IRL component to a digital marketplace. And so the angle of the store is very much aligned more around brand awareness, marketing, education of our customers. Customer feedback is also one of the most amazing things that we get in the store, because it is the only way that we can guarantee get feedback from people that haven't downloaded the app. Alternatively, who do we get access from? Everybody that's broken that barrier and has already downloaded Pickle, right? We can reach out to them, we can ask them about their experience, but what about all these other people that haven't downloaded the app yet? A lot of them are coming into our store or learning about Pickle for the first time, and we're learning a ton from them. So that's been incredibly helpful. And then the community component is priceless in the sense that we can have these awesome in-person activations, and we can work with different people around brand collabs and strategic partnerships and events. We have even started having a new rotating closet in the store too, where it's not a permanent closet, but it's somebody brought in from our community who wants to feature their items there for a month or a couple weeks or so.
That's so epic. I feel like that's so smart, managing closets for people who can't manage it.
Right.
Like I wouldn't have never thought of that. And it's really like guerrilla marketing at the core. How long do you plan to keep the store open? And how many times do you visit the store?
Well, at the beginning when we were launching the store, I was learning how to become a retail manager or actually open a store, because I did not have any experience there. So I was there a lot at the beginning when we launched in December of 2023. So we have done our, full kind of 6 months. We're getting into the time where we've now kind of stabilized the store, where I have an amazing retail store manager. We have some great staffing. It's pretty like consistently covered. And now we can start thinking about even more creative ways to innovate there, which I'm very excited about for the next couple of quarters. But we signed a 2-year lease. So we'll have that space for the next 2 years. We'll continue to evaluate and see how it's going, and looking at that area of it being an amazing marketing tool and kind of supplemental angle for us, because the majority, by far majority of our transactions are outside of the store orders that are happening, which is great. That's what we want. It's on the app itself. But there's something to be said with having access to some of these closets that otherwise wouldn't be able to be on Pickle, and also having access to that in-person touch point with our community.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a lot of like ROI that you're not even able to capture in quantified metrics.
Yes.
Especially through, like you said, it's like literally acting as a billboard, like it's marketing. And how do you even measure that?
Right.
I'm curious to learn like what have been like the top performing marketing strategies that you've found have worked the best for Pickle.
Anything that we can do to increase word of mouth and basically getting people to try out Pickle, because getting rentals on people's bodies is how people actually talk about the marketplace and talk about that amazing experience of the items showing up right before their event, or them needing that last minute when they were in a pickle and they didn't have anything to wear, using our app and having that like magic moment. That's our best marketing, is those people telling their friends about it. And so things that we do is we do like to offer a welcome credit incentive that kind of lowers the barrier for people to try out the app itself. And so anything that we can do on that side, because we have such strong retention metrics, the unit economics works out that way, that we can invest in that kind of upfront incentive and then get people to really try the platform, because they'll come back and continue to spend money. That has been our most lucrative tactic, but it's seeing how else we can amplify that, like social media amplification of encouraging people to tag us when they are wearing their outfits. We get tons of organic shares and people sharing about their amazing experience and tagging us and posting their photos and everything that is unpaid and really helps amplify both our brand awareness and our value prop in general.
I love that you said that, in a pickle.
In a pickle.
That's
Is
that
the name.
literally
That's
how
the
you
name.
came up with it? Oh my God, I'm
The name.
obsessed. I always wondered. It was like,
I know. It's good. Everyone loves it when they learn about it. So like, we need to tie this into our marketing better when you're in an outfit pickle.
oh my God, I'm very excited to see all the new marketing things you're gonna do as it scales and grow. Do you ever see Pickle expanding outside the future of fashion?
Yes, we definitely do. And that's the long-term goal. We see that anything in your home and closet could be shared with somebody else in your community. There are so many underutilized assets and things that we don't use all the time that you could probably borrow from somebody that lives a few floors up from you, or that lives in the same neighborhood, or is in your same community cul-de-sac where you don't need to have the exact same snowblower, for example, things like that. There's definitely those types of assets that we're starting in the fashion space that, you know, is a bit of a higher volume kind of play, but expanding beyond that to other items that not everybody needs to own is kind of the next evolution of Pickle beyond fashion.
Makes so much sense. I totally see it. Do you have any advice for other founders trying to start marketplaces and how they can, in the beginning, really manage that supply and demand that's like so critical for marketplace apps to succeed?
Definitely trying and doing a lot of things at the beginning that don't scale, because that is how you will, again, get that very direct customer feedback, whether it is you doing deliveries yourself or doing all the customer experience and support yourself. Things like that will help you build much better. When you are, of course, building the supply and the demand, you do have to start on the supply side, because obviously we can't tell everybody come rent on Pickle if there aren't items to rent, but having that balancing act. So whether it is at more of a POC scale or MVP where you can start to test those dynamics, that'll be really helpful, because you'll start to see different inflection points of what is the volume of supply I need to be able to meet demand here. And so that was something that we had to look very closely at in our New York City market, and is very helpful as we're thinking about expansion in other markets of what is that, not just supply volume, but supply density of per person that's on the platform. And thinking about all the other nuances that come with that, like sizing and style preferences and everything there. But paying close attention to the data early days and seeing if you can test it at a very, very small scale before pouring in a bunch of money or resources into it.
Yeah, oh my God, it sounds so challenging. Like,
it's definitely a challenge. So I would say that there are a million other pieces of advice I'd probably give, but the scrappy techniques at the beginning and focusing on kickstarting that supply any way possible is probably the first way to start.
Yeah, I mean, they say consumer companies are the hardest ones to build, and I would say consumer marketplace companies probably top that.
Adds in a whole other layer. It's
you're
crazy.
literally tackling the hardest type of company to build.
But it's so fun and it's dynamic, and we also love too that it's so asset light. You know, we are this node of an amazing exchange between person A and person B of getting the outfit of their dreams or whatever.
I love that. What do you think is the most important ingredient to be a successful entrepreneur?
Number one is grit, for sure. You have to be so persistent and almost stubborn to a point of you have so much conviction in being able to build something and wanting to solve a problem for your end customers that you will be able to adapt and pivot and iterate along the way, which would be kind of my second thing, is adaptability and being willing to pivot and try something new. If we had stayed with Pickle 1.0 forever, we would have been looking at, okay, we've been acquiring some users, but our retention is bad. oh no, let's try to see if we can move that. Or we saw a gap somewhere else and we quickly pivoted, got the app in a different spot, and then was able to run with that, which was super helpful. And we continue to pivot and iterate on really little things daily and throughout kind of our weeks. And then the last point that I would say, I said, those were kind of my main two things. I forget my last one about being a great founder. It'll come to me. Oh, I guess it's just being super customer driven and really, really, really listening to your customers, because I think an advantage that Brian and I have in this space too is that we aren't fashion people. We are building an app that's solving a problem between both sides of the marketplace. And that has helped us far more than if we had a traditional fashion background, even though we are in the fashion space right now.
Yeah, you're almost approaching it unbiased and like forced to be customer obsessed out of pure
Right.
survival.
Yes, for our survival, you're like, oh, okay, we won't be able to continue living if without this.
Yeah. Do you think being a woman has influenced the way you think about business and like your leadership style?
I think that there are a few different points. I definitely learned this pretty early on, and this is just in the professional world, not necessarily only being a founder. This is something I learned at Blackstone, but something that I think men do really well that women also need to exude is just pure confidence. And so I have seen night and day shifts of the types of meetings or conversations or whatever it was that I was having where I wasn't just presenting myself as super confident in what I was saying. And that, I think, was something that I learned quickly, even back in the day at Blackstone, when somebody would look at the men in the room, even if that was an intern, and I'm like, hi, I'm running this meeting kind of thing. And it's a confidence thing. So that has been something I've taken as a learning, I think. It's something that I would recommend everybody try to practice. And it's hard sometimes if you're not organically kind of that more extroverted people person, but it's been very helpful for a lot of different processes, meetings, conversations I've had. It doesn't have to just be with men, it's with women too, of course. And then as far as just being a woman in general, I'd say that, you know, typically we're a bit more traditionally empathetic and everything. And I think that actually helps me a ton in the business world and in building a company, because a hard part about building a company is building a really amazing team. And the team that you're building is made up of a bunch of people that have lives. And so if you don't have empathy for some of the things that they might be going through, or figuring out the best ways to have empathy while delivering feedback or having a tough conversation, can create a pretty tough culture. And so I think that's been something that, as a woman, having more of that innate trait, and something that I definitely lean into, has been really helpful for building a team that with a strong culture, where it's a very trusted environment and very open, where we have very open conversations about things that are going on.
Totally. I mean, one of the most common things I hear female founders say is confidence is the most critical thing, because I actually think it's the hardest thing to have.
Yeah.
Because it's really tough when everyone around you is telling you that you probably should not be running around building a company and quitting your job, and then also like trying to bring out a new idea in the world, to then be like, I still feel extremely confident in myself and I'm going to continue doing this. Like, it's just a wild, very contradictory concept. But literally every single successful female founder I've talked to like says confidence is like, it's just like a must. Like, there's no way around it. How do you find confidence in your life?
I find confidence in my life. I think there's definitely some external factors and a combination of like internal factors and external. So intrinsically, I find confidence in being very open to feedback. So I can be very confident about an idea that I have or a position that I have, but also sharing that I would love to hear your thoughts on this or get that kind of feedback. And being really receptive to that, I think, makes it easier to step into something and be really confident about it. I also definitely surround myself with positive, supportive people. I don't have a lot of people in my life. I don't have anyone in my life that says, this is crazy, why are you doing this? Or that didn't believe in me along this journey, even during the day. Because now it's easy for there to be little highlights and things, or you get an award, or you get an accolade, or you hit a milestone. It's so easy for people to congratulate you now. But there were many years where we didn't have any money. I was literally a delivery person in New York City kind of situation. And the people that were in my life, that are still in my life, were so supportive and positive that entire time. So that's kind of like my external, I include Brian in that too. And then the internal of being really open and receptive to feedback, I think helps.
I'm really obsessed with that answer, because if you kind of have this mindset of like, hey, like, what's the worst case going to happen? Like, someone just going to give me feedback, and then I can change and then do it again. Or it kind of has this like easier mindset going into things of like, it's not that deep. Like, it's not that serious.
Yeah, it's okay.
And you can kind of go into things with more confidence, knowing that, hey, like, if I mess up, it's not a big deal. And I think a lot of that lack of confidence probably comes from like, what if I mess up, or what if I'm not good enough, or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, guess what? It doesn't actually matter, because you can just get new feedback, and you can just iterate and pivot. And I literally am obsessed with that answer. That's like the best answer I've ever heard, I think.
Oh, thank you. I would be like, and pair that with like a lot of data drivenness.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, and also bring all the data with you for your idea.
Like, whatever.
But numbers, aside from that, we'll go with the first answer.
Who do you look up to in business?
I had this woman who I went to college with. Her name is Brooke Kiley, but she just got married, so it's Brooke Slattery, whatever. We'll just call her Brooke Kiley. And we went to Penn together, and she was on my lacrosse team while we were there. And she was a senior when I was a freshman. And she was always just doing what I thought was like the coolest things on the business side of everything. So she even started a little like jewelry company with her mom that she ran in and out of like lacrosse tournaments back in high school and everything, and had kind of like pursued that a bit through college, and then had gone right into VC after college, which was basically unheard of, because most people can't do that very well or get a job in that area. Such a badass. And she was just an absolute go-getter type of person. And I really looked up to her, and she was really helpful when I moved into the city and started navigating this entrepreneurial experience. She obviously has a lot of fundraising or investor experience, and then she has amazing connections in like the founder space. So she's been somebody that's been so helpful along my journey, and someone that it was cool to have that kind of tie back in college and everything. And then as far as other famous people that I'm not personally connected with, like Sarah Blakely and her story and the grit that she put into Spanx is just so inspiring. So I love listening to any of her different ways that she's spoken to people, or her podcasts, or her stories, or just written, I read all the articles and everything there. So I do love her story. And grit is the number one word that I feel like goes into her persona as well.
Totally. I mean, the number of people who come on the podcast and then Sarah Blakely's like my answer. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like same. Like, makes complete sense. Right. It's also so underrated to find these people in your actual life. Like, and I think a lot of the times people say, well, like I'm not privileged or lucky enough to like know these people, but like, you could have easily not built a relationship with the senior on the lacrosse team. Like, it's not like she was like jumping for joy trying to be your BFF.
No, she wasn't.
I'm sure you had to go out of your way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how is that? Yeah. How does that work? Like, did you just go up to her and say like, I think you're really cool? Like, what was that like?
I mean, we definitely, obviously we knew each other on the team and everything, but our relationship there was teammate, and I was a freshman. And so I was learning a lot about how to be a good college lacrosse player. But once I was starting to make next steps in my anything related to career and everything, I thought about the people that were inspirational or influential to me, and she was top there. So reached out to her. I, sent her a text or a message and said, here are the things that I'm currently thinking about or working on. I would just love 10 minutes of your time if you don't mind connecting. And, she was willing to do that. And I think that was something that we had obviously had a base kind of foundation, but it's also something that I would recommend for people who are just looking for that kind of mentorship or advice. If there's somebody that you have some sort of connection with, whether they are an alumni of your school or have a similar interest, lean into that and ask for 10 minutes of networking time. See if you can add any value to them. Maybe you have a connection for them or something that you can do. But it doesn't hurt to ask, like, what's the worst that's going to happen? They say no, or they don't respond.
Yeah. And then literally your life is exactly the same.
Just ask the next person.
Yeah. No, literally. I say this all the time. I was like, shoot your shot as many times as possible. And the more that you try, the more likely you're actually going to get someone who's going to be like, hey, maybe I'm down to help. And like that response actually can change the trajectory of your life.
Absolutely.
Like, it's worth it to take multiple 5-second shots, send a few messages here and there, to the possibility of like someone actually like influencing and impacting your trajectory. Like, it seems like she has.
Yeah.
Which is really awesome to hear. If you could go back in time and tell your younger self some advice, what would you tell her?
My college self, I would have told her to study less and stop freaking out about college. No, I was a very on top of it kind of student, and I was very good at being a student, but I wish that I'd put in a bit more energy into more like practical things that would kind of help you in the real world. Would have been some advice to myself, but I don't know. I don't know if I would really change anything given the path of where I've kind of ended up. But when I do give college students advice, it's often, especially when you're talking to students that are at some of these really high pressure institutions, that take a little step back. It's going to be okay if you don't get an A on this midterm, for example, because that was something that I was very on top of as a student, and I don't think that would have made a huge difference of my success today, but it might have given me just a little bit more of a balance in my life at a time where you have the opportunity to have that kind of balance, and then you go and start a company and you don't have any balance. So
Totally. No, we totally forget how privileged we are as students, and like that time will never going to come back. And it's really about like what you do that makes you successful later on, and not about, like you said, like the A you got on the exam.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope I answered all of your questions.
I'm literally so excited to see where Pickle goes, and I cannot wait to be using it.
Yay, I know.
I'm all about helping women find more ways to make money on what they already have without any extra work. Right. So this is the
passive income is so good. It's so good. Yes. Everyone needs to open their closets, start lending.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.